Small North Carolina town, something big is spooking residents. Multiple people have claimed to see a large furry animal.
Bigfoot right now, back on the radar at a Tampa Bay park.
I literally could see him from all the way over here. I started hearing it.
What's the likelihood that there are big animals that have gone undetected by scientists and by trained observers?
Bigfoot's walking down right now.
We see something moving on the hill above.
These are not just animals. These are a type of people. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be found.
Dr. Eric Rickard has spent much of his career exploring places people have never gone before in search of new species. So far, no Bigfoot or anything like it. Not only is that figure in the video not Sasquatch, but it's safe to say that Sasquatch is not something that would even exist.
That was me in the Roger Patterson Bigfoot film, yes.
Well, this is an age-old mystery. It's Bigfoot, whether real or not. Today, Bob Gimlin, the second half of legendary duo Patterson Gimlin, which allegedly captured the mysterious creature on film decades ago.
I'll never forget that few seconds that I did get to see her. It'll be with me the rest of my life.
The Patterson Gimlin film claims to have captured a real-life Bigfoot, and with a runtime of just under a minute, it's said to be some of the best evidence of the creature's existence to this very day. However, when we explore the origin of the film, we run into a few different stories. The established mainstream story is said that cameraman and Bigfoot enthusiast Roger Patterson, along with his friend Bob Gimlin, went in search of Bigfoot tracks and ironically witnessed and filmed an actual Bigfoot. Patterson later took a polygraph test, which he passed, confirming this story to be true. The next version of this account is said that Bob Hieronymus, an acquaintance of Patterson, claimed to be the one wearing a Bigfoot costume, which is seen in the film. He stated that the film's idea was devised by Patterson as a way to make him money. Now this was also proven to be true, as Hieronymus also passed a polygraph examination, only this time the test was televised on a TV show called Lie Detector back in 2005. And lastly, it's said that they set out to film a documentary on Bigfoot, and Patterson used a clip from this to promote to the public that the Bigfoot creature was real. So this video will be focusing on Bob Gimlin as he retells his version of the event. I'll be looking for any clues that may suggest that the Patterson Gimlin film was a hoax. And just so we're clear, I'm not out to prove or disprove the existence of Bigfoot. I'd also like to give a shout out to YouTube user HiccupsDad for suggesting this topic, and if you have an interest in body language, then you can get a copy of my free ebook over at theobservantman.com. In it, you'll learn how I analyze a person in an easy 5-step process. So now let's watch as Gimlin recalls the moment he had a run-in with Bigfoot.
It was a Saturday, sunshiny, bright fall day, October 20th, to be exact. And it was just a warm, sunshiny day, and we were just riding up alongside the creek on the east side of the creek. And about 4 miles from where we were camped, Roger was just riding. Roger was riding in front of me. I was leading the little pack horse. We were basically going out to camp about 40 miles further out than we'd been riding. We've been riding, making big circles every day. And so we were going to go on out, so we had a pack horse with us, a small pack horse. And when we were just riding up the creek bed, and Roger was taking pictures of the beautiful colors, of the fall colors of the trees and the brush and all that. And all at once, when we come around a bend in the creek, there one stood across the creek from us. And of course, Roger's horse just went berserk. Well, mine did too, but I was able to stay on him because, you know, I was a pretty good rider back in, I was only 36 years old. So I was a pretty good rider, and I stayed on my horse, and Roger finally, he didn't get actually dumped off his horse, but he got a little help getting off, and he grabbed the saddlebag cover, one flap that he had on there, and unflapped it and got the camera out and started running across the creek, taking the picture. And he stumbled. It had a kind of a bank on the far side, and so Roger had had the camera up to his eye, of course, and he kind of stumbled and fell down on his elbows. And he wasn't really sure if he got sand or whatever in the camera, because this is all happening really, really fast and excited.
Okay, so Gimlin starts by confirming the day of the sighting, stating Saturday. He then follows with the date, October 20th. However, the date that he mentions and the date of the reported sighting both confirm that it was a Friday, not a Saturday.
It was a Saturday, sunshiny, bright fall day.
So this is a simple mistake, and we all make them. However, later he states that he remembers not seeing anyone working in the hills due to it being a Saturday. He then strengthens this statement by clarifying it was a Saturday afternoon.
And the closest thing to us was guys way on up on the side of the mountain with a bulldozer and road graders, and I don't even know if they were even anybody up there on a Saturday. This was on a Saturday afternoon.
So if this wasn't a mix-up and more of a Freudian slip, then it could mean that the Bigfoot sighting was possibly filmed prior to the report, perhaps the Saturday before. So let's take a look. As he tells us about the day being Saturday, we see that his head is tilted back slightly with his neck exposed, which is a common gesture for either arrogance, superiority, and/or confidence. However, when he states the date which aligns with the official report, we see his head tilt downward and he comes across as more serious while he offers a power gaze to the interviewer. Even his voice gets louder and deeper at this moment, as well as these words being faster in comparison to the rest of the story.
Fall day, October 20th, to be exact. And it was just a warm, sunshiny day.
Also, we see a puzzled look between his eyebrows, and this can suggest that he may be feeling concerned, having doubt, or possibly lacking confidence.
It was a Saturday, sunshiny, bright fall day.
Now, if we look at his blink rate, yes, you heard me, his blink rate, we can see before he mentions the date, he blinks once. While stating the date, however, he blinks 5 times. Then after the date, we see his head tilt back again, exposing his neck, and he follows with 2 more blinks shortly after.
All day, October 20th, to be exact.
Now, increased blinking can point to signs of stress. So if he appeared relaxed and confident while mentioning Saturday, but then seeming a little more stressed telling us the date, then this may be of some importance.
October 20th, to be exact.
He also gestures, as you can see here, with a reassuring head nod while stating to be exact.
To be exact.
As well as the statement itself, to be exact, also being a reassurance statement, which is overselling this small piece of information. As in, he appears slightly stressed, but he really wants us to know the date.
And it was just a warm, sunshiny day, and we were just riding up alongside the creek on the east side of the creek.
Now he continues about the sunny day, and we see his chin go back up and he becomes animated again. So at this point, I strongly believe that he is indeed telling the truth, and that is that the Saturday was definitely warm and sunny. Also, we're only 2 sentences in, and he's already repeated that the day was sunny and that they were riding alongside the creek.
It was a Saturday, sunshiny, bright fall day, and it was just a warm, sunshiny day, and we were just riding up alongside the creek on the east side of the creek.
Keep note of this.
And about 4 miles from where we were camped, Roger was just riding. Roger was riding in front of me.
Here he repeats and then clarifies where Roger was riding, and that was in front of him.
I was leading the little pack horse. We were basically going out to camp about 40 miles further out than we'd been riding. We've been riding, making big circles every day. And so
after he states, we've been riding, making big circles every day, he looks to the top right and quickly looks straight into his lap. And this all happens reasonably fast. Now compare this to a different clip that also appears later on in the interview.
Just start riding in big circles. Well, not really circles, just wherever we could go, you know.
So here is a correction made to the previous big circle statement, and the truth is, they didn't ride in big circles. It's a petty exaggeration, I know. However, the cluster of nonverbals here tell me that he possibly feels guilty about it. For example, if we break it down, we first witness Gimlin making a misleading statement.
We've been riding, making big circles every day.
He then briefly takes time to reflect on the memory of what actually happened. This is seen by his eyes darting to the top right, which by using eye accessing cues as a guide could mean that he is remembering a visual memory. Now, after making the connection between what he said and the memory, he realizes that he made an exaggeration. He then proceeds to display what looks like a brief moment of guilt by him breaking eye contact and bowing his head in a quick submissive gesture. Now, this may be a guilty response. However, I feel that this may suggest that they were actually riding around the woods at the time of the event and may not have gone directly to a staged area. But still, this only tells me that they were either looking for Bigfoot tracks or looking for a film location.
We were going to go on out, so we had a pack horse with us, a small pack horse.
Now here he repeats himself again to clarify that the pack horse was small.
We were going to go on out, so we had a pack horse with us, a small pack horse. And when we were just riding up the creek bed, and Roger was taking pictures of the beautiful colors, of the fall colors of the trees and the brush and all of that.
Here he repeats and elaborates on exactly what colors he was talking about, and that was the fall colors. At this point, a pattern has clearly emerged. He said that the day was sunny, and then clarifies by adding it was warm and sunny. He then said that they were riding alongside the creek, and then clarifies that it was the east side of the creek. He then said Roger was riding, then stops and clarifies that Roger was riding in front of him. He then said they were going out with a pack horse, and then he clarified that it was a small pack horse. And then he said Patterson was taking pictures of the beautiful colors. Then he followed by clarifying that the beautiful colors were of the fall colors. And not to mention how he said on a Saturday, then clarifies that this was a Saturday afternoon. So if he clarifies simple stuff such as the side of the creek they were riding, where Roger was positioned, and the size of the pack horse, then we could expect a slightly detailed breakdown of the Bigfoot, which would make total sense based upon his language patterns we are witnessing so far.
And all at once, when we come around a bend in the creek, there one stood across the creek from us.
Okay, so here's the exciting bit. The moment he saw a creature that is still debated to even exist at all, and he says, "There one stood across the creek from us." No clarification, no elaboration, and no further details. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had friends give me more details about a dog they saw on TikTok. I mean, he clarifies more details about the pack horse, as in the pack horse was small. Based on the previous duplicated statements, I would have expected him to say something along the lines of, "There one stood across the creek from us, just standing there, at least." So let's take a look at his gestures. Just before he states what some would consider being the most important details of the story, we see an extremely subtle partial shoulder shrug, which is assisted with a slight head shake from left to right, which in this case seems to support the shrug. Now, a partial shoulder shrug can signify a lack of commitment and or confidence in what is being said. As this is happening, we see him close his eyes and briefly break eye contact with the interviewer. Now, this is a clip of another time in the interview that he mentions riding up alongside the creek before seeing the creature, and it too shows Gimlin displaying a partial shrug.
Just riding along the creek, lazily kind of rolling along there with a sunshiny afternoon, and all at once, boom.
So we have a possible gesture of uncertainty here in regards to him saying all at once when we come around the bend in the creek. Also, if we look at his head movement, we can see that his head falls into position much like earlier when stating the date. So again, we see a fixed head position and locked eyes on the interviewer. So if he did have a lack in confidence because this is in fact false information, then a possible reason for this could be because they were setting up to film, therefore they never came around the bend in the creek.
There one stood across the creek from us.
Now, he refers to the Bigfoot as one, meaning if we didn't already know the story was about Bigfoot, we wouldn't even know what he was referring to here. By saying one stood across the creek, it allows us to fill in the information we would assume fits. For example, knowing the story is about a Bigfoot, we would interpret it as Bigfoot stood across the creek, or simply visualize the creature standing across the creek from him. So, why is this important? It's important because by saying one, he has left out vital information, and that is the identity of what he actually saw. For example, we learned earlier that Gimlin was trailing a horse, And we know that this horse was a pack horse, and we also know the size of this pack horse because he mentioned it was a small pack horse. And we know these details because he was happy to share that information with us. However, the details of what he saw across the creek, well, one stood there. And again, no further details on the creature. Now let's say that this Bigfoot was without question a man in an ape suit.
Hello.
Then Gimlin wouldn't be lying about seeing one because he doesn't actually specify what it was that he actually saw. He also makes note that it stood across from them. Now compare that to an offhanded statement made by Bob Hieronymus during his interview on the TV show Lie Detector.
And Roger told me to go over this certain place and stand. And when he yelled or give me the signal to do the Bigfoot walk down through there.
So this begs the question, is Gimlin recalling the creature standing there? Or is he recalling the memory of Hieronymus standing there waiting for his cue to begin walking?
And of course, Roger's horse just went berserk. Well, mine did too, but I was able to stay on him because, you know, I was a pretty good rider back in, I was only 36 years old. So I was a pretty good rider.
Now Gimlin just told us that he saw a Bigfoot, and now has diverted off topic by telling us some facts about how he was a good horse rider when he was 36 years old. He even seems unenthused while telling us this information due to the audible exhale that comes across as a sigh.
On him, because, you know, I was...
Also, did you notice how he repeated himself on how he was a good rider, and again clarifies the reason for this was because he was 36 years old?
You know, I was a pretty good rider back in, I was only 36 years old. So I was a pretty good rider, and I stayed on my horse, and Roger finally...
And with that, the rest of the story is focused entirely on Roger. There is no more mention of the Bigfoot. Now when telling a story, and when the story happened to you, you are usually the leading star, or at best you share your side of the story from the position of an onlooker. You have emotions, you have information, and you have details all expressed from the first person's perspective. Now as we listen to the story, we notice that something is rather infrequent, and that something is the topic of oneself, more specifically, the pronoun I being used while telling this story. A sign that things may not be as they seem can be when the pronoun I, I'm, me, or myself are missing or rarely used within a story. Within this story, Bob Gimlin refers to himself as I 7 times, and here they are.
I was leading a little pack horse, but I was able to stay on him. I was a pretty good rider back in, I was only 36 years old. I was a pretty good rider. I stayed on my horse.
He also used the word me once.
Roger was riding in front of me.
And the word we was used 8 times. Now let's put that into perspective with the interview of Bob Hieronymus. During his retellings of the event, we hear him use the pronoun I 30 times. And he uses the word me 10 times, which places him confidently within the story at least 40 times. Hieronymus also uses the word we 6 times. So in regards to people lacking pronouns or replacing I with we, it can sometimes suggest that the speaker is attempting to distance themselves from taking ownership and not taking on the full responsibility of the story being told. Now in this case, it could be because it's out of respect for Roger, and he's including him as often as possible because it is his story. Or it could be an attempt to disassociate himself and not put himself in the story as frequent. Also, he talks about the horses reacting to the sighting by going berserk, but he doesn't explain how he felt until this statement at the end by adding, and excited, almost as if he forgot to tell us.
This is all happening really, really fast and excited.
Now in total, this story is made up of roughly 13 sentences, and out of those 13 sentences, only 8 words are in direct relation to what we can only assume is the Bigfoot, on which the story is entirely based upon, and even those 8 words were vague in detail. And just for perspective, he uses 21 words to describe Roger taking photos of the trees and fall colours. So now that's the story. However, we're not over yet and we still have more to look at. So now this question is asked in a way that only requires a yes or a no answer. Let's listen.
Had you guys gone up there looking for Bigfoot?
So that's the question. Now let's listen to Gimlin's response.
Had you guys gone up there looking for Bigfoot?
Yes, trying to find more evidence.
Now this is answered clear and straightforward. Now I'm sure you'll notice there is a nice obvious cut between the question and the answer. Well, the cut was made by the original uploader. However, we're only using this for an example, so whatever the original question was, it doesn't matter. So what I'm trying to say anyway is that when Gimlin answers, regardless of what the question was, we are met with a confident yes, followed by a confident reason, which was to try and find more evidence. There are no partial shrugs or no other indications of insecurity or hesitation. Now let's look at another straightforward question that only requires a yes or a no answer. Here Gimlin is asked if Patterson and himself set out to do a documentary that day.
Talk about that day. You guys set out to do a documentary on Bigfoot that day?
The day that we started out?
Don't you hate that? Ask a question, you get a question in return.
Okay, we left camp about 1:30 in the afternoon. A sunny, real sunshine, sunny day. And we got everything packed up in the little pack horse and ate lunch and everything, and we got started out. And of course, Roger was riding in front of me all this time, and he was filming the trees, the beautiful colors, the changing fall colors that everything was changing, and never even thinking that we'd ever run onto a Bigfoot, because we were going to head way on back, about 35, 40 miles farther back, and stay the weekend. And we were only, I say, about 4 miles from where our camp was, just riding along the creek and lazily kind of rolling along there with a sunshiny afternoon, and all at once, boom, there's one standing across the creek. So things started happening dramatically fast.
Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again?
He just retold the exact same story. The sunny day, the little pack horse, and how Roger was riding in front of him, even the fall colours. So let's take a look. Firstly, he starts by answering the question with a question. When it comes to hesitation, this is definitely one way to do it.
Talk about that day. You guys set out to do a documentary on Bigfoot that day?
The day that we started out?
No, don't answer my question with another question. You give me 1 or 2 replies, yes or no.
In a lot of cases, when the recipient of the question answers a question with a question, it shows confusion and/or an opportunity to buy time. So asking a question rather than answering is a good way to stall or even attempt to get out of answering the original question. For example, what originally was, "Did you set out to do a documentary on Bigfoot that day?" was redesigned under the guise of Gimlin seeking clarification into, "The day we started out?" So Gimlin then proceeded to alter the question to, "What did you do the day you started out?" And he answered that question and not the original question about the documentary. By doing this, he did not deny nor confirm that they were actually filming a documentary that day, and he never makes reference to the documentary in this reply at all. He does not say, "No, we went up there looking for more evidence," or "No, we didn't set out to make a documentary that day." He just repeats the entire story again, almost word for word, while adding in small details such as the time, as if he's improving the story on its second playthrough.
A sunny, real sunshine, sunny day.
Talk about that day. You guys set out to do a documentary on Bigfoot that day?
Okay, we left camp about 1:30 in the afternoon.
So what is the possible reason for this? Well, perhaps if he says yes, he could inadvertently suggest that they had a costume with them that day. If he says no, on the other hand, and this is in fact a hoax, then he may not have the confidence in pulling off a lie so bold. So is this Gimlin attempting to avoid the question? Also, when he asked, "Did you set out to make a documentary on Bigfoot that day?" Gimlin replies with, "The day we started out?" Meaning Gimlin is seeking clarification on the day the man was referring to, even though the man stated that day. Now, if there was no attempt to film a Bigfoot documentary around the same day, or even time frame, then this question Gimlin replies with would be totally useless. Because why would clarifying the day even matter if there wasn't ever a documentary filmed around the same time? But if there was an attempt at making a documentary around the same time, say the Saturday before the reported sighting, well, now the question Gimlin asks in return is way more appropriate.
Never even thinking that we'd ever run onto a Bigfoot.
Now, he mentions the creature by name here by saying never ever thinking that we'd ever run onto a Bigfoot. But again, he does not say that they saw a Bigfoot. He says they never thought they would run onto a Bigfoot. Now, this is not an answer or identifying what it was that he actually saw. This is his belief appearing to be an answer, and we receive and answer this back as, but he did run onto a Bigfoot. And again, we make the connection of Gimlin witnessing a Bigfoot without him confirming anything. We also see here a partial shoulder shrug at the beginning as he states, never ever thinking that we'd run onto a Bigfoot. And if this gesture does mean what I stated before, then why would he possibly be lacking confidence during the statement?
Just riding along the creek and lazily kind of rolling along there with a sunshiny afternoon, and all at once, boom, there's one standing across the creek.
Okay, so here's our second time we hear Gimlin describe the encounter. He states, just riding along the creek, and we can see again a partial shoulder shrug seen by the way his head tilts towards his shoulder, with it being more prominent on the mouth seen here. We also see his eyes tighten the same way they did when he mentioned the date previously. Also, after he tells us that he saw one, his eyes briefly gaze ahead, which could be to visualize the figure, and that is followed by a subtle head shake which could indicate disbelief or disagreement. He says all at once, boom, there's one standing across the creek. Again, by the use of his language, he is not confirming or taking responsibility that it was an actual Bigfoot that he saw.
So things started happening dramatically fast. Yeah.
But then again, he concludes on the most interesting part of the story, and that is with us all asking ourselves, and then what happened?
The naysayers. What do you say to them?
I say, well, think whatever you want to think. I know what I saw, and if you've seen the film footage, analyze it and think about it.
So here Gimlin is asked about his thoughts on the naysayers, and it seemed like he was eagerly ready to give his opinion on the matter. His head tilted back, his chin went up, and there was no hesitation in his speech. He delivered his thoughts on this in a relaxed manner while being clear and concise. Now he responds to this with, I know what I saw. And the problem is that regardless of it being a man in an ape suit or an actual Bigfoot, he still would be confident in what he saw. Because he knows what he saw, and it would either be one of these two things. Now, although this is quite a clear statement, we cannot conclude on this.
And don't tell me that they can't exist, and because there's so many people out in the woods all the time that would see one. I said, don't even talk to me about that. I said, just think about what you're saying, and if you don't, then that's your ball game. You can think. I said, I'm not out here to prove to anybody that they exist at all. I said, I know they exist, and I say, there's no question. They say, well, is there a little bit of question? Is there a question whether you could have been fooled? I said, no way. No way.
So here Gimlin has just stated that he knows they exist and that there was no way that he was fooled. So let's take a look. So here we can see that he has a puzzled look again on his forehead and between his eyebrows. And as I mentioned earlier, this can reveal possible doubt or concerns. His head is also slightly turned, displaying a sideways glance. This can be seen as a disapproving gesture. So this could be the emotions he feels towards people questioning him about the Bigfoot topic, as in he is concerned and doubtful in their opinion and he disapproves of them. We see here strong eye contact, much like at the beginning of his story. However, we don't have the same worrisome look in between his eyebrows and forehead as we did then. Now during this part, he seems a lot more relaxed while also having a relaxed blink rate. We also see him head nodding, which is congruent with his words, making this very likely to be a truthful statement. So I would say he does strongly believe in the existence of the Bigfoot species.
They say, well, is there a little bit of question? Is there a question whether you could have been fooled?
He's now role-playing as the naysayer by stating, they say, and this has him exposing his neck, displaying arrogance and superiority while looking down his nose at the interviewer. This may be the identity he gives those that disagree or question him. Here we see another puzzled look on the eyebrows again. He also has here a moment where he narrows his lips. Now a display like this can suggest a brief thought of negative emotions. His lips then transition to being pursed, which is a display of possibly disagreeing with someone. And this sideways glance here is again showing that he disapproves of those who question him. Now with all that, he was relaxed, he was confident, and he was congruent with his words and behaviors. I believe that everything he stated here was the truth. He does know what he saw. he does believe in the Bigfoot species, and, well, as for that last part, he was actually recalling a memory of a conversation he had with someone that disagreed with him, and not the actual Bigfoot encounter. Listen again.
There's so many people out in the woods all the time that would see one. I'd say, don't even talk to me about that. I said, just think about what you're saying, and if you don't, then that's your ball game. You can think. I said, I'm not out here to prove to anybody that they exist at all. I said, I know they exist. And I say, there's no question. They say, well, is there a little bit of question? Is there a question whether you could have been fooled? I said, no way. No way.
Now we also have this. This was filmed during a Q&A event with Gimlin. Here you'll see an attendee of the audience question him on the conflicting story of Bob Hieronymus. Here we have a man put forward the question, there were just 2 people there, is that right? You can see the man asking the question did so not to appear confrontational and made it super easy for Gimlin to answer.
My question is, there were just 2 people there, is that right?
Now the question is designed to only require a yes or no answer, by the way the man added is that right to the end of the statement. So you would expect Gimlin's reply to be a strong yes, just like this.
Yes, trying to find more evidence.
Easy. So let's hear what he says.
You are correct.
Okay, so Gimlin didn't follow with a yes or a no. He followed with, you are correct. This feels like Gimlin is avoiding confirmation. We know what a yes sounds like.
Yes, trying to find more evidence.
Gimlin seems to put the responsibility of the answer entirely on the man asking the question, as in, those are your words, not mine, you are correct, not me. Basically, Gimlin had nothing to do with this question. He had no further involvement or input. The attendee asked the question and was then told that he was correct.
You are correct.
If Gimlin had just said yes, that's correct, you couldn't argue with that. However, he wasn't direct in that way.
Look me in the eye. There was 2 people down there, Roger Patterson and myself. Down there, Roger Patterson. Look me in the eye. There was 2 people down there, Roger Patterson and myself.
Now Gimlin continues answering by stating there were 2 people down there, Roger Patterson and myself, which is a mirrored response to the man's original question.
There were just 2 people there, is that right? There was 2 people down there.
Now in comparison, the confession from Bob Hieronymus during the TV show Lie Detector, we can hear a lot of detail that isn't necessary, but he voiced it just to help him build a stronger case.
That was me in a costume in 1967 in the Roger Patterson Bigfoot film, yes.
In this one reply, we heard Hieronymus confirm that it was him in a costume, he confirms the year it took place, he confirms the media he was presented in, and he finishes with a strong confirmation of all those things by saying yes. Now the only flaw I see here is that he isn't specific with the date in which it took place, which in this case would help a lot. Now the other side to all this is Gimlin has nothing to prove. He already has the film and a respectful following, and therefore he doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Whereas Hieronymus has everything to gain from the situation and he needs to bring a lot more to the table to get noticed. Now the last clip I'd like to show you is an audio snippet where Gimlin explains how after filming the Bigfoot encounter, Patterson and him had a huge falling out. This falling out between them had Gimlin go into hiding because he didn't want to be associated with the Bigfoot sighting or the footage. Now because of this, Patterson, instead of going at it alone, actually hired someone to pretend to be Bob Gimlin. Have a listen.
Still, Roger and his associates continued the roadshow, with one major difference.
They hired some guy that said he was me.
So, touring the country, making money with a Bob Gimlin impersonator.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Patterson, the man we're supposed to believe to not have faked the Bigfoot film, went out of his way to literally fake his friend, so he could continue traveling America making money by giving talks about the encounter. So in the end, the question about the documentary seemed to be of some significance since it was purposefully avoided by Gimlin. And Bob Hieronymus, from what I've seen, never discusses the documentary topic. So if that is the case, then maybe Patterson asked Hieronymus to take part in the film without ever telling him its intended purpose.
2 or 3 weeks later, up come the movie, on the television, the film. I said, aha, that's what you were doing,
Also, If this was fake, then reading stories and watching videos on both Patterson and Hieronymus show that they seem to lack any real sense of remorse in regards to their involvement with the film. I mean, if this was a hoax, then Patterson wasn't slow in replacing Gimlin. Patterson simply hired a lookalike to lie about his identity, to which then he proceeded to travel the country fueled by the need to gain fame and fortune. And with Hieronymus, he was asked if he ever felt guilty for fooling America, which he answered with a very confident and very cool, "No." Watch.
So did you ever feel guilty?
No, because it wasn't illegal to do that, you know.
But you tricked America.
I was supposed to have been paid for wearing a suit in the woods, you know. I didn't care what they'd done with the suit, you know, or what they'd done with the film.
But you never felt bad that here you were part of a hoax that would trick people like me into believing there was a swamp monster running around out there?
No, it didn't bother me.
Did you ever think to yourself, now y'all, this is wrong?
Well, he was going to make money off this. He had this pretty well planned out.
Make money off hoaxing people?
Makes money off a hoax, yeah.
Hieronymus thought he was making a quick dollar, while Patterson thought he was making a name for himself. So the bottom line is, if this was fake, then both Patterson and Hieronymus didn't seem to have a problem with fooling the public for monetary gain. And this alone could be the reason why Gimlin and Patterson had a falling out. Perhaps Gimlin was the only one out of this small group of three that seemingly had a conscience and possibly felt bad about hoaxing the Bigfoot encounter. So in this video, I was able to observe that he states 3 times it was a Saturday when in fact it took place on a Friday, and he never corrects himself. He has a non-animated power gaze and a possible lack of confidence when mentioning the date. He repeated and clarified minor details to draw out his story and does not clarify anything about the Bigfoot. We saw a partial shoulder shrug each time he stated coming around the creek. He identifies the Bigfoot using distancing language such as 1 and does not use the term Bigfoot as the identity of what he saw. He highlighted that he was a good horse rider instead of continuing on about the details of Bigfoot. He rarely used the pronouns I or me in this story. He only used 8 words for describing the Bigfoot's description and its actions. He answered the documentary question with another question. He did not answer the documentary question and instead repeated his story. He talks about the horse's reaction to the Bigfoot, but not his. He avoids his emotions throughout the initial story until right at the end, this.
And excited.
He did not exhibit emotions throughout the initial story that indicated either shock, fear, or excitement. He is, however, confident in what he saw. He truthfully retold us a conversation that he had about the Bigfoot's legitimacy. He told the man that he is correct, and then mirrored the question as an answer. And lastly, Patterson hired a man to impersonate Bob Gimlin, so why wouldn't he dress a guy up to impersonate a Bigfoot too? So if this information presented here was to be correct, and this encounter was indeed fake, then I would piece this story together like this. The film was likely shot around the same time as the Bigfoot documentary, if not the same day. The significant shot of the Bigfoot was filmed on a Saturday and purposefully recorded at the end of the film reel. They didn't ride in big circles, nor did they have an actual location to ride to, and they more or less stumbled upon the location. After they picked a location to film, they took time in setting up the scene and did not come around the bend in the creek, and this is because they were already standing there with Hieronymus waiting for his cue to start walking. After some time waiting, such as a few days, planning and organising, possibly creating evidence, they reported the film on a Friday. Gimlin, having second thoughts with the public feedback of the film, may have had something to do with Patterson and him having a falling out, so Patterson responded by replacing Gimlin so he could stay on track and continue what he started.
I really regretted that I was there and saw it because of the ridicule and because of my wife being upset at me.
Now fast forward a few decades, and Bob Gimlin begins making appearances again, possibly because the amount of Bigfoot evidence is now abundant, and the Bigfoot community has grown and taken on a life of its own. Therefore, the attention is not directed entirely at him anymore, and instead, he has become a legend within the Bigfoot community, and he's just happy to keep the dream alive. However, possibly distancing himself from the truth by avoiding certain topics and questions, while keeping his story very minimalistic with minimal detail. However, in the words of Bob Gimlin,
take it for what it is.
Now observers, there's tons of evidence out there proving and disproving this case, so please be vigilant when researching and come to your own conclusion on the matter. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed my review on the Patterson Gimlin story, and now I'd like to hear from you. What do you think about the Patterson Gimlin film? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with more videos just like this one. And if you're still with me until now, then allow me to offer a huge thanks, and it's because of you I choose to make these videos. And with that, this concludes my review of the Patterson Gimlin story. So observers, until next time.